I'm creating an intuitive interface, and it has to be usable and useful. But it also has to satisfy the brand requirements. So if the brand requirements, if I'm at Disneyland, right? Disneyland is the happiest place on earth, right? And so, my card key at Disney is maybe a magic band versus a card key, or my phone app in, let's say a Hilton hotel. So those two things are intuitive, and one thing is maybe a little bit more delightful because that's the brand, right? Disney versus Hilton.
Dave is looking at a really interesting problem, which is going to hit us soon. When everybody uses the same AI tools trained on the same data to come up with product ideas or feature interactions or design decisions, won't everything begin to feel the same? AI can solve intuitive pattern matching, common interactions, usability heuristics. That's what large language models trained on millions of interfaces do really well. They've seen every checkout flow, every settings menu, every onboarding pattern. But identity, delight, that's taste, that's brand, that's the human expert. That's what could begin to fade away.
And the same is true even prior to AI. Um, um, you know, in looking across interfaces and looking across templates and looking across components and design systems, you start to see, things have somewhat settled into a kind of a uniformity. Um, a lot of folks on the web, in different, social media circles, places like LinkedIn or otherwise, are happy to jump in and talk about the latest brand representation that's sort of a de-evolution of the existing brand and just, essentially a mark that becomes something like in Helvetica. And you get to this sort of more uniform, um, commoditized sort of look and feel. But there'll be backlash against that, and we'll sort of see the pendulum swing the other way. Designers have to introduce taste and have to hold fast to the idea of taste because AI isn't doing that yet. They have to be as empathetic as possible because the AI tools are not going to be at all empathetic. And they've got to introduce a level of creativity that maybe you'll see it in AI, and maybe AI is the spark, but it's really them who provide essentially the getting the AI to think in these different ways and or using those tools in ways that are going to enhance their creativity.
Taste, empathy, creativity. These are going to be the key design skills companies are going to be buying, the parts AI can't really commoditize. Dave's pointing at a pattern that predates AI. Commoditization isn't new, AI just accelerates it. If your job is make this look polished, AI can do that now. If your job is make this feel like this, that still required judgment and taste and consideration.
But the fact is that um, there's this notion of human in the loop. My former colleague from McKinsey, Tate Bannerman, put this model together. It's sort of beyond human in the loop. And so thinking more deeply about what it means to have a human in the loop as far as AI goes in order to check ourselves and keep a framework in mind as we move forward using these tools where we can step back and say, all right, full automation is no problem here. We don't have to have a quote unquote human in the loop. That's okay. Where do I need to do that versus where do I need to, get in and be, the sort of the circuit breaker, right? But transparency is also really, really important. I've not seen as much transparency as we need to have. And the transparency, might exist in places where here's a little vid on TikTok and it's Sora created. Great. But I think we need a good deal more transparency. For instance, I teach over at California College of Arts in San Francisco. And also, by the way, down at San Jose State University, I teach some design courses. So in my design strategy course at CCA, I've asked the students to absolutely use AI tools. I've also very pointedly and specifically asked them to be transparent and show the work that arrived at whatever images or otherwise that they've created, right? Show me the in design parlance, the wireframes, right? The sort of the process the prompts, the dead ends, so that I can see that you work towards essentially this final product, and didn't just like do a single prompt to a single image, call it a day. I want to see what they've done. I want that transparency in the work.
And showing the working does something else too. It forces you to really understand what's happening in the model. You have to make that connection between the prompt and the output. And that's only ever going to help a designer or developer or CEO better understand the model they're using. Basically, there's no better way to learn than to teach somebody else.
Just as with any medium, if you're designing within the medium and you're designing with these tools, the greater your understanding of how the tools work, the better your ability to design for that medium. So if you're going to be a web designer, know your HTML and your CSS and your JavaScript, but here's some basics. Yes, everyone should learn how these models work. Grab a class or two. There's plenty of free ones online. Begin to learn how the models are trained and how they extract information.